we're going to go through each one. There are 17 of them. And I really want to focus on like, why are these important? Like the why of each one. And my proposal here is that we take it in turns. So I'm going to say why I think this one is important. And then the next one, I'm going to ask someone on the call to speak to why they think that's important. I'll start by asking for a volunteer. And if we don't get one, I will just ask one of you to do it. So just encouraging you to volunteer quickly if you don't want me to ask you, basically. So here we go. So first of all, we have like subdivided the design stage into the first bit, which is the scoping. So here we have the first one, which is UNDP preliminary root cause analysis. This assumes that UNDP is running the project. If it was WWF running the project or Conservation International running the project or another partner agency, it would be them doing the preliminary root cause analysis. And the reason why this is really important is because this is what allows you to identify that there's enough of a problem to bother going to get donor funding for it, right? In order to write some kind of project concept note to get money, you need to have a good sense of the fact that the problem actually does exist, rather than making up that the problem exists. So that's why we call it a preliminary root cause analysis. And it's probably not such a deep dive. It's more of a desk-based job, right, that happens. So number 2 is a project concept note. Anybody want to talk about why it's important to have a project concept note? All right, Alexandra, would you like to say something about that? And nothing's wrong here, any idea you have?
I mean, you mean why it's important to have a project concept
yes.
in the scoping phase?
Yes.
Because it kind of sets, you know, the plan. Like, yeah, that's my first kind
of. Totally. Yeah, it's like the first time you write down what you might do, right? And also it acts as like your first tool that you might start presenting to potential donors, right? That's like the beginning of raising funds for your project. So you don't want to write a whole long proposal if they're not interested. So you start with the project concept note to begin with, right? So then we come to identify the best ministry as the project document signatory. I've talked about this just now in the milestones, and I want to just ask Rinny to say something about her experience related to this and why it's important. Just why it's important, Rinny, would be great.
Thanks, Liz. I think for the ministry or our counterpart, it's important because they are the one who's going to be our key organization or key person, or who's going to lead the project or the platform. Which in the case of Indonesia, we have identified the Ministry of Agriculture to lead or to be the lead agency for the project as well as for the platform. But then when the platform evolved, and we also involving the Ministry of Coordinating Affairs, because they are the one who can actually lead or coordinate the different ministries that has to be involved in the platform. I think that's my learnings.
Yeah, great. That makes sense. So it was important to have the right ministry that has the legitimacy to coordinate other ministries, right, as the lead. Yeah. Great. And so the next one here is that you have a high-level platform process plan. Leif, would you like to say why that might be important?
Yeah, I think for when you start to talk with the stakeholders, you need to be able to show what the process looks like, give people a feeling of the time span, different elements that go into it. It can be a long process, so that's important to flesh out. And the reason I think why it's high level is that you still at that point need some flexibility, and can adjust as you go along, and also you don't control all the factors. So this is kind of your first take on what your proposal is.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. Yeah, especially for starting to talk to stakeholders, like this is what we might do, right?
Right.
Yeah. Great, thanks. Okay, so then the next kind of stuff, then we'll go from scoping now into like formalizing the project. So here we have number 5, which is like you have a sufficient 3-year budget, and we provide guidance on that. So it's as per the guidance. We have a sufficient 3-year budget. So Celeste and your team, would you like to say why this is important? Celeste? Amilcar, Cesar, Oscar?
Hello, Lisa. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, why might sufficient 3-year budget be important?
Porque es importante un presupuesto
Por 3 años.
años. To assure the implementation of the activities, to be more sustainable in the time.
To ensure the activities in the year. Para asegurar que las actividades sean cumplidas en el año.
Yeah, the guys are saying that to assure that the activities during the year can be accomplished.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, especially the long-term implementation. So it's also that we're making a promise to a whole load of stakeholders at a national level, you know, from companies to government to civil society to farmers, that we're going to go through a process together to define solutions in a national action plan. So if we don't have a 3-year budget, then our promise is a bit risky. It's a bit risky, our promise around that. So ideally, there's a sufficient 3-year budget to work with the platform dialogue at the beginning. Thank you. Okay, so then the next one is that we have a donor contract that's actually signed. So, I mean, that's kind of obvious, like why we need that. Well, so that the donor is committed to giving funds, and also we know what kind of reporting and requirements they have so that we can meet them and honor those commitments and promises to the donor. Next one is a signed project document. Let me ask Pascalie, why is that important?
So it's important because then it commits both UNDP and of course also the government counterpart with whom you sign to delivering the project as planned in the product.
Yeah, it's a real moment of actual commitments being made, right? Yeah, and budgets being allocated and like, okay, we need to hire staff, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, great. It's like the internal contract. Thank you. Next one is working arrangements between the country office. It could also be local partners and also the GCP in terms of support that's given. Let me see. Anyone want to volunteer for that? Why that's important?
I can give it a shot.
Thanks, Charlie.
I think, you know, a key thing for successful delivery of any platform is a strong local ownership, by which we normally refer to strong local ownership by the government and by the stakeholders. But if the country office itself that is effectively making the project happen does not feel a strong sense of ownership, then that's not a very solid foundation. So I think, and this probably applies to other organizations like WWF that have international networks, you know, we don't have line management authority over our country offices. So we need them to feel that this is a project they have ownership of in partnership with us, and there's clarity over roles and responsibilities and how we're going to work together, so that we don't have confusion, which I think sometimes is not always the case. I think sometimes there does seem to be some confusion over who's doing what and who's responsible for what. So the more we can sort that out up front, the better for the working relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. It also means it makes it clear like where funds might need to be allocated depending on who's doing what, right, between different parties, which is helpful. So great, thank you. Okay, the next one sounds obvious, but it's another step in the process, which is that the money is transferred from the place that it starts from to where it needs to be spent. Meggie, would you like to say why this is important, please? Meggie, are you there?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. Listening. Number 9, yeah, money transfer. Platform team recruited?
No, just the money transferred. Like, why is that important to have the money transferred?
Well, to ensure the running of the program, the money should be transferred to cover all the costs necessary to formalize how the money is transferred to each activities from the. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little bit blurred, but we can still hear you. Okay, now we can't hear you, but I understood like it's really important. You need to make sure that the money's in the place where you want to do the activities, which is exactly right. And I imagine that when you're doing provincial platform work, that's also really important. Like, how do you get money from, from a global donor through Panama to Jakarta to North Sumatra? It's kind of, quite a lot of work to get that done.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, number 10 is platform team recruited. And how about we have Rico, would you like to speak about why this might be important?
Yes, of course, it's very important. For me, in our team, the platform team record, the output is who is a responsible person in the field and in the different aspects, such as legalization, in field, in the monitoring, and etc. So the recruitment team become very important to make sure the platform is running as well. So I think it's all for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like, without them, nothing happens, right? Because nobody else has the time. So you have to hire good people and the right people. And in the model that we use for the UNDP Green Commodities Program platforms, we recommend that there's at least 3 people in the team. You'll notice that in some teams there's 2, some teams there's 5, it depends on the size of the country and everything. But at least someone who's like the platform coordinator, one who's more technical based, and then someone who focuses on communications or assisting the team.
Yes.
Thank you, Rico.
Thanks. Thank you, Liz.
Okay. So the next stage here we have is preparation. And I've put this little arrow here on the left, and if you just saw that. But basically, sometimes the preparation and the formalization, they tend to start in parallel. So while they're in this order, it doesn't mean that you don't start the ones in preparation until you finish the formalization. Sometimes they start at the same time. And so here we have the last bunch. So the first one is to establish an interministerial steering committee. Cynthia, do you want to give this a try? Why is this important?
Okay, thank you, Liz. Liz. So why it's important to establish the interministerial steering committee? First, because if this is really a multi-stakeholders, the management or for instance, like the palm oil is not only in one minister. So we want to ensure that all the government that working on this commodity is also coordinated and communicate. But the most important is also for this interministerial steering committee is also ensuring their ownership and to get also their political commitment. So if we establish the steering committee, so it will, sorry.
It's okay.
So it make more effective on the decision related with the, for instance, like regulation and the policy things. That's why we need the steering committee, especially on interministerial things, so make more effective on communication and coordination things. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we know things have to change in the department or the Ministry of Environment and Forestry and in agriculture and probably in economy. So we need them to be involved from the beginning because we want them to make changes, to all make changes, right? So yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Cynthia. Okay, so the next one, vision, mission, and objectives of the platform are agreed by the steering committee. Anyone want to volunteer for that one?
Sure, I'll give that a try.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, just the steering committee has to be the body really driving the work forward. And so if they don't have a clear vision and clear objectives, then not much is going to actually happen. You can have a plan on paper, but if the people who are really in charge of making sure that it follows the plan, if they don't agree to it, then you don't get very far.
Right, exactly. So that's totally right. Thanks, Colleen. And also it means that you actually are forced to write down a vision and objectives for your platform. You'd be surprised how often that doesn't even happen. So the idea that you have like something that you can keep returning to, especially when dialogue gets difficult. So you'll see like in the next stage, if you've agreed a vision and objectives and you've presented that to all the stakeholders and they understand it, it's a good place to come back to when things get difficult, you know, like to say, okay, let's just remind ourselves, we're not here to fix some particular stakeholder's problem, right? We're here for this much broader vision and broader objectives that are generally not are easy to agree with, right? So it's also a really good tool to have like for the rest of the life cycle of a platform. So thanks, Colleen. Okay, stakeholder engagement plan. Anybody like to take that one? Why might that be important?
Okay, I'll give it a try.
Thanks, Renee.
So the stakeholder engagement plan is actually very important to ensure that the right stakeholders are engaged and involved in the platform's events or meetings, because the idea of having a platform is to make everybody or to bring everybody together to discuss and also to look for solutions for the issues or problems that is currently faced in sustainable agriculture or commodity development. So ensuring that the right stakeholders are engaged and also is very important So the plan is actually important, so that because we also want to make the platform inclusive for all the stakeholders involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So it's good to have a plan to do that, and also it helps to prioritize, right? Because there's so many potential stakeholders that you could work with, and we need to prioritize which ones to give what kind of attention. So it helps you to get more specific about who you're going to engage with more, how you're going to prioritize your time, and which of the ways, like the methods that you're going to engage with different people. So yeah, great. Thanks, Renee. Long-term agreement with facilitators. Why might a long-term agreement with facilitators be important? Anyone want to give that a try?
I can try.
Great.
Well, it's very important because the facilitator will be needed often, but not full-time. So there needs to be a process to be able to hire the facilitator easily, as opposed to open a consulting assignment every time. So having a long-term agreement really helps.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks, Pascal. And also just, hidden within here is that we really do need an independent facilitator contracted for the life cycle of the platform. And the reason for that is that by nature, most of these commodity supply chains that we work within have conflicts inside of them. Like, they're just people who have different interests. Some people want more money. Some people want less money. Some people want more land. Some people want less land. There's always a conflict somewhere that's happening. And so independent facilitation is essential. Also, expert facilitation is essential, because basically, if you design the meetings well between stakeholders and someone facilitates it well, you'll have a good process. If you don't design it well, you wasted a lot of money on a big meeting where a lot of people came and nothing happened, or you just got into a bit of an argument and there was no outcome. And then the reason to keep the same facilitator, as long as they're good, is because once they get to know the stakeholders and the people and they build up trust with them, they'll get much better at being able to manage all the stakeholders and manage the dialogue. So I can't highlight this enough, how important it is for every platform to have an independent facilitator to support the workshops, the plenary meetings, and the working groups, basically. Great. So the next one is agreed platform process plan with the steering committee. Paraguay team, would you like to take this one, please? Celeste and team, are you with us? Okay. Let's ask someone else. Iqbal, can you hear me? Do you want to take why this might be important?
Give a try.
Thanks.
I think it is very important at the beginning, as it is a steering committee, and it is from different organization or different government agency, and process at the beginning, which is agreed by all the agency, it will be easier when the times goes, and in the process, if there is a chance, it will be slightly changed, but not too far. So the process from the beginning is totally important.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the steering committee knows the process and they've kind of agreed to it, because also they're expected to show up, right? If you're having a big meeting gathering your stakeholders, you want your steering committee to be there. So making sure that they've agreed to the overall process plan is really important, so that they're like, yeah, I know that there was this many workshops and this many meetings, and that this is what the timeline is, So that's great. Thank you, Iqbal. Okay, the next one is a communication strategy. So anyone want to talk about why having a communication strategy is important?
Hi, I can give it a try.
Great.
Well, a communication strategy is important for every plan, but since this plan has many stakeholders and many actors from different places, it's important that the communication is clear and we have a strategy so everyone is on the same page on what are we doing, when and where are we doing what we're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Totally. And even more important, because most of what we do in a platform is communicate, right? So we're communicating to many, many stakeholders, all who have different perceptions and understandings. And so the communication strategy is like, it lives alongside the stakeholder engagement strategy, right? It's like, what are we saying to whom and when, and how are we doing that in a way that's participatory and inclusive and all those kinds of things. So that's great. And then the last one is the online collaboration platform setup. And basically what we mean by that is having a place where, like, it could be like a Google Drive, for example, or a Dropbox or something like that, where you allow the stakeholders involved, or like maybe each technical working group has their own folder, so that they can just share information, have access to the reports from workshops, look at the research, look at draft versions of root cause analyses or draft versions of national action plans, have the contact information of the stakeholders that they're working with. So somewhere where people are asked to say, this is where you can access your information and share information between each other. And you could make it super simple, like I said, like literally Dropbox or Google Drive, or you could make it like really sophisticated and use like a Facebook group and post messages and have all sorts. You can make it much more sophisticated. It's up to you, basically. And the reason why that's important is because you all know how difficult it is to manage your emails and all find all the documents and where everything is. So it's really good if we can help our stakeholders to make it easy for them to do the work. And mostly because everybody who engages in this dialogue does it for free, right? We don't pay for their time. They come to the workshops and they do it because they believe in the work. And so we need to honor their commitment to that and make it as easy and clean and respectful as possible, basically. Okay, so those are basically what we do in the design stage. Thank you all for your contributions. They were all excellent. And I actually now wanted just to open it up to everybody for any kind of questions or comments or ideas that you have that are related to your work, that you're like, this is an opportunity for you to ask me something. And just to flag, like, we're still focused in the design stage. So I'm happy to answer random questions as well, but generally on this, like, where are you sitting, thinking maybe, what about this idea, or I have a question about this. So just some time for that now.
I do have a question.
Great.
And I'm sure Colleen has the same. We were talking about it yesterday. So our question is, at what point do you say that a platform exists? Because in your phases here, you have preparation and you have formalization, which actually you could even change the names interchangeably. Formalization. And so at what point do you say you have a platform?
So that's a really great question. My sense with that, Pascal, is that I wouldn't really want to say that we have a platform until I had signed a ProDoc, right? So I would say it's like a stage of, like, we signed a ProDoc, therefore a ministry has decided to support this. And we could say, now we have we are setting up a platform. That's the stage where we're setting up a platform. And then I think once you have your ministerial or established interministerial steering committee, that's a moment where they're like, and now officially we're launching this platform, right? Like, we have a vision and mission, and this is we're ready to go. In the dialogue stage, the first milestone is like a launch, like a plenary launch. But of course, it exists before that because you need to get all the stakeholders to come to the plenary launch. So I would say it's like there's a moment of we're setting one up, pro-doc signed, and then we've established it because the steering committee is in place and has agreed on a vision and objectives, and they're like, okay, now let's invite everybody to come to the conversation. Life, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think, sometimes you're forced to say, we started. But I think our message is that everything is a process. So, the the startup date isn't necessarily as important as the whole process. We gradually progress on the different steps, I think.
Yeah, there may be situations, Pascali, where like for whatever political reason or for some other, because one stakeholder you still haven't managed to get that's essential to kind of be happy, that you wait to launch. Like you might be like, let's just wait until just before the plenary because we still have to work on this particular stakeholder. So you kind of have to judge it based on when you think you're going to get a good positive response from most of your stakeholders that you would consider essential.
No, that helps. But I'd like to ask, for instance, the colleagues from Paraguay on the national soy and beef platforms. Do they consider themselves as having a national platform on soy and beef or not? Because of course, I mean, they're in the process, right? But I'm just wondering, from their standpoint, how do they feel about that? Would be great, because we seem to hear different things from the team in Paraguay. So it would be great to hear from the team that is actually working on that.
Okay. Celeste, do you want to respond?
Hello. We are trying to process Pascal question, sorry.
Okay.
Can you summarize the question specifically? You want to know about in which state we are on the platform right now, or?
Would you consider that you have a platform at the national level on soy and beef? Is it a formalized? I mean, with reference to the question, like, would you say you have one, or would you say you don't yet have one?
No. We are going to start the national soy platform right now. What we have done until now was the departmental platform in two departmental of Paraguay, and we are starting now the process on a regional platform for beef platform in Chaco, which contains 3 departmental. Am I confusing you now?
No, that's great. Thank you.
So, and we are expecting to start the national beef platform in 2019.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Could
Good.
I ask a question about the governance structure, the Interministerial Steering Committee?
Yeah.
I'm curious about our thinking on that, and the strengths and weaknesses of that particular governance structure. And I'm interested in people's experiences. I had an interesting conversation with a guy in Denmark last year who specializes in sort of multi-stakeholder platforms of this sort of nature, and he was advocating for steering committees that are a little bit more multi-stakeholder and also a bit more sort of cross-party from a political point of view, so that when political changes happen, you have sort of wider political buy-in rather than it sometimes being seen as an initiative of one particular party. So I was curious to hear sort of anyone else's thinking on that, and whether we feel that's I know we're going to review this later in the year, but how well we think that particular structure works or doesn't work, if that feels within the scope of this conversation.
Sure. Does anybody want to, I mean, maybe like we could ask Rini and Celeste's team and Life. Life, do you want to go first? I'll hand to Rini.
Yeah, I agree that if you can get away with it, it's better for the platform to have a little bit broader. I mean, it should still be kind of executive. So definitely you would want decision makers at a reasonably high level, but better for the process, I think, if you can have a bit broader participation. But it depends on the country. And in some countries, the government is very strong and dominating. And so you tend to have, let's say, ministers, vice ministers, or directors from the different ministries in the government. And they just don't want to see the opposition in there, or maybe the growers. And in other countries, for instance, like Paraguay, has like a quite wide participation in their structures, which I think is great, but it's probably not possible everywhere.
Thanks, Life. Rini, any thoughts?
Charlie, can you repeat your last question, please?
Just about, whether having a steering group that is only with the representatives from the ministries and the current government. There's a level which is political and some which is just ministerial, but or whether it's better to think about how to be more multi-stakeholder or more cross-party, so it's the steering committee is more representative of the wider stakeholders.
Yeah, so in Indonesia, we have the steering committee not only from the government, but it's multi-stakeholder. We also have representative or associations from the producer, from smallholder, and also from private sector. So in Indonesia, we have like association for palm oil industry, and then association for farmer groups. Or smallholders association, they are all sitting in the steering committee, but only association at the national level. So I think it is also important because to have not only government in the steering committee, but high level representative from related association. Because, for example, in what they or what they have said in the steering committee, this is from the palm oil industry association, or we call it here GAPKI. They said that it is important for us to be involved in this platform because any government regulation or policy will impact us. So we would also be able to contribute or to the decision making on any policy. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks, Rini. And Charlie, just to add, like in the detailed guidance for the steering committee terms of reference, we do encourage additional representation from producers or the private sector, for example. But in many cases, like you don't want to end up having like a fight or a voting system around, because you don't have anyone to vote yet, around like which civil society member or which producer organization gets on the steering committee. So in the case of Indonesia, where you do have a large structure that is supposedly representative, right, then it's easier. So I think if you can find, it's like that balance of representation with moving forward and having the structures in place to do that. So yeah, that's, I think in Indonesia it was easier to have that representation in the steering committee.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have time for one last question. If anyone has a question before I move on to a few more things. No? All right, let me come back.
So Elise, can I just ask one?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, with the experience that we have now in different countries, do you think that there's any sort of average length of time it takes to, I mean, maybe it's never finished, right, this process, but maybe to go from we think we want to have a platform to launch, for example, and then it continues to grow from there. But how long would that initial phase?
So 1.5 years. Yeah.
Great.
So to go from like we have an idea to that, also going through all those 17 steps to then being able to say we're ready to launch, 1.5 years at least. I mean, in our experience, other countries it's taken much longer. So, and in some countries not. I think partly depends how big your country is and how much work you have to do to get galvanized support.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Cleo. Okay, so I'm conscious. I'm actually going to whiz through some of the more like nuances of guidance that we have. And I'm going to partly do this mostly for the people who are like really new to this methodology and this guidance, and for the people who might watch the recording who'd signed up but couldn't make it today. And so just bear with me while we do this. So I want to flag that for most of these are like some of the key tools, guidance, and examples that we have that you can use in the design of a platform. So we have a 3-year budget template. We have terms of references for the platform team. We have a terms of reference template for the steering committee, and also like what their roles and responsibilities are and the composition. We have examples of vision, mission, missions, and objectives for different platforms. We have stakeholder engagement plan, like guidance on how to do it, and templates that you can use to manage that. We have terms of references for independent facilitators. We also have examples of what a platform process might look like on one slide, so that you can use that as like the overarching slide or information piece, and also how to write a communication strategy, as well as examples of a communication strategy. And they're all on the Google Drive. And for those of you who have been with us for a long time, so Rini and Indonesia team and also Paraguay team, I want to flag that this has been reorganized. So on the Google Drive, now you'll see that these are the folders, and it looks different than it used to look. So if you want to look at a 3-year budget template, it's here in National Commodity Platform Guidance, Budget and Financing. This is the template. You'll see here there are lots of other pieces of guidance, like how to finance the implementation of your action plan, how to look at your funding needs and potential mechanisms, and also how you might finance the actual operations of a platform as you go through, like beyond the donor funding. And then these are there in Spanish as well, right? Then just in terms of platform teams, this is like, you can see this is the Paraguay team here, Indonesia team, which I know has grown, but I haven't updated yet the list of everybody's pictures. This is the Papua New Guinea team here, Costa Rica team, and Peru team. So in terms of platform teams, if you go to the Drive, you get this National Commodity Platform Guidance, and then there's a folder, Terms of Reference. And here is the Platform Management Unit Terms of Reference templates. So in there, there's templates for a comms assistant, a national platform coordinator, etc. Also, the facilitator template is in here. And you have examples like the Liberia palm oil team. You know, I helped to write the terms of reference for that. So you can see like the different, like how it was nuanced a little bit for them. also for the fisheries program, there's different templates there for the projects as well. And here's also where you have the steering committee terms of reference in that folder. So just to show you that. This is the Interministerial Platform Steering Committee guidance, but the detail is, as I said, is here. It's also in another, we've duplicated it and put it in another folder, which is called Governance and Decision Making. And so here you have the terms of reference for the steering committee, but also you have this document, which I'm hovering over, which is the platform consensus building and decision making process. So this is like what the governance structure might look like, who makes decisions and how do you build consensus. And also we've put in here things like the Sustainable Development Goals and also the Global Compact Food and Agricultural Principles, just in terms of what UNDP needs to safeguard, right? Like we can't have a platform that produces a national action plan that says, yes, let's chop down more forest, right? It has to take into account the SDGs and also the kind of principles and global standards that the UN upholds in the world or that it supports. Then vision, mission, and objectives approved by the steering committee. This is an example from the FOXB, the Indonesia palm oil website. We have websites for a lot of the different platforms. So Paraguay has a website, and Costa Rica fish, Costa Rica pineapple. They all have websites. So, you know, if you're learning and you're starting new, you can go and have a look at all the different ones that are there and use them. Then I was going to talk to you a little bit more in depth about stakeholder engagement, but I don't think we have time. But basically, this is what the plan, the guidance helps you with. It helps you to identify them, prioritize them, and work out how you're going to engage them. And this is what it looks like in terms of how you will categorize your stakeholders between like, oh, they might be super supportive to they might be unsupportive. And then we have suggested ways to work with them inside the platforms, like the formal ways and then the informal ways. And the informal ways are just as important as the formal ways. So just to flag for you, in the Google Drive, here you have National Commodity Platform Guidance, and you have a folder, Stakeholder Engagement. This is the guidance which was updated by Life and Me in recently. So in September, engaging stakeholders. It's also in Spanish. And here you also have a document here, stakeholder value from platforms. So when you're going out, this is a good for the design stage. When you're going out and starting to talk to stakeholders, you might want to think about like, oh, what's in it for them? What's in it for the stakeholders? And we've written this document that like differentiates between government, private sector, civil society, and other development partners. You also have a mapping tool here. And also we have guidance around like how you would how do you engage government at the highest level to get their political buy-in? So this is another piece of new guidance actually from last year. Then this is about the independent facilitator. So we talked about this just to show that this is like some of the main qualities and some of the functions that we want them to do. I mentioned that there's this template already in the terms of reference folder. And I also just want to flag, we have another folder which is called Meetings, Workshops, and Facilitation. And in there, we've put a lot of facilitation methodologies and tools in here. So, you can go and have a look and use that whenever you want as well, and ask questions to me if you need help with any of them. And then in terms of agreeing a high-level process plan, so this is the kind of template that we have, which you could then adapt for your country. So just looking at like the series over time and what it might look like. So this is the template that we provide. And then this is just an example from the Dominican Republic in terms of like over time, what they did and what happened and how many meetings happened and the themes. So it can be that simple, basically. When we talk about like a high level process plan, it's that kind of level that we're talking about. And then communication strategy wise, generally we're talking about the 60-40 rule, and which is basically like, out of 100% of what you do, probably 40% is worth communicating about, and the other 60% is just work that you need to do and is not worth making a noise about to other people. So we have a guidance around this, which is not quite there, but around like how to develop a strategy that is thinking about 60-40. And also like the use of video. So you'll see here there's a lot of different countries with different videos from their projects on the, sorry, I don't know what's happening there, on the YouTube channel that we have. So UNDP Green Commodities Program has a YouTube channel. And here, this is on fish from Costa Rica, this is on coffee from Peru, and there's some from Paraguay here, there's global videos, there's all sorts of different videos. So I encourage you to take a look at that and get inspired about what kind of videos you might want to make as well for your program. And so you'll see here that we have a communications folder. And this is where you'll find in the communications folder the strategic guidance on how you write a communication strategy. It's down here, also in Spanish at the bottom. So all of these are in Spanish and in English. And so I just wanted to do a quick wrap up. So if we could just go round and just in one word, just say what you're taking away from this webinar. Maybe you can have 3 words, but just one sentence, let's say. What might you do after this webinar that you wouldn't have done otherwise if you hadn't joined this workshop today? So one action that you're taking away, or one thing that you might do differently. So I will start. And one of my actions to take away is to reflect more on the assessment of our guidance materials in relation to the steering committee and based on Charlie's input on this call. And I'm going to pass it to Cynthia.
Okay, thank you, Liz. So my reflection is if we could do better is on the preparations for grid vision, mission, and objective of platform. We really need to ensure the ownership of the interministerial steering committee, because it will really make easier for the operational the platform. For instance, it might be a lot of multi-stakeholders platform that done by many NGOs or initiated by the private sectors. So if the interministerials and the steering committee from the multi-stakeholders is involved and own and agreed on our vision, mission, objective, or even the process plan, so they will recommend also our platform. So there's not a lot of platform, but really this platform will be work for solution.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the government will make some policy and regulation changes if it's not working.
Great.
Yeah, that's my reflection. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you pass it, Cynthia?
I pass it to Colin.
Mm-hmm.
I am inspired to take a closer look at a lot of the guidance material that we have. There's so much information in there, and I've browsed a little bit, but I think that will help answer some of my questions. So I pass to Charlie.
Well, this feels like a good wider context for my session on the private sector in July. So I'm prompted to look at the private sector guidance documents and reflect on that private sector conversation within the context of this wider platform conversation. I will pass to Rico, are you there?
Okay.
You're on. Yeah, great. Mm-hmm.
Yes. My reflection, I think, is two things. The one is the first thing is establish interministerial standing committee, because I think it's very important to collect different stakeholder, not only the interministerial, but I think it's different partner, different stakeholders such as private sector, producer, NGO, or etc. So it will be better communicate and coordination. The second thing is
Great, Riku, I'm just going to have to stop you there. One thing only because we're
okay.
running out of time. Can you pass it, please?
Okay, I pass to Matthias.
Thank you, Rico. Yeah, I have the same reflection as Colleen. I think I really need to start looking at the documents in the Google Drive, and I will start sharing them with you guys so you can take a look at them now and then. I'll pass it to Rainy.
Okay, so I share my thought actually with Cynthia because I think that is very, if we have to start or what we need to improve is to have a vision, mission, and objective of the platform agreed by the steering committee, because it's very important to ensure that the platform is can achieve what it's actually intended to be established, and also to give bigger buy-in and ownership from the platform members and also from the government. Yeah, so I will pass it on to Maggie.
Thank you, Birini. Well, today's seminar inspires me to work on the provincial platform where I work on. I think I need to dig on the drive documents where I can get more infos so I can implement at the provincial level. But I think I need to agree with Ibu Rini and Cynthia that we need a clear mission, vision, and objectives to share with all stakeholders, and also to strengthen the engagement of the stakeholders where I'm working on now. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Maggie. Can you pass it to someone?
Yeah, okay, I'll pass it on to Live.
Yes. So I've been giving platform trainings before, but it's a while back, and now I need to start to do it again with new teams in Peru and perhaps also Ecuador. So for me, it was great to have this kind of refresher, and also there are like new things and strengthened elements. So this is very useful, and of course, I always take the opportunity to learn from the guru, Lisa, the platform guru. So
Thanks.
I can't remember who's left.
We have Alex left, Iqbal.
Alex, absolutely.
So for me, like similarly to Colleen and Matthias, I discovered that there's so much like knowledge, materials, and documents on the Google Drive. So my action is like to look through them and to read them because they seem very useful. Thank you. I pass it to Karen.
Hi. Hi, so similar to what Alexandra and Matthias were saying, I'm also gonna go in the Google Drive and see the communication material that are on there.
Thanks, Karen. Can you pass it to Pascali, maybe?
Okay, so for me, it was very useful, and the action is that I need to have more of the teams in the ground participate on these calls. I mean, of course, we have Indonesia, We have a lot of them here today, which is great, but we have nobody from Liberia, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks, Pascal. I'm going to pass it.
Yeah. Who's left? Let me check.
Iqbal, the Paraguay team.
Yeah, let's go to Celeste, please.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I don't see them anymore. Have they here?
We are here, and the team is here.
Okay.
As we always say, we value very much this space because it's very helpful for us to listen to other platform experience in order to enrich ours. So that's it.
Great. Thanks, Celeste. So Iqbal, would you like to take us home?
Yes, in my case, that vision mission that agree from the beginning by steering committee is very important. I was in charge in the 2 districts in my province, and it is a very clear picture. If it is agreed from the beginning, it will be easier whatever the challenges happen at the front. But if it is not agree or different perception, needs to find a solution to engage with another challenge. So this is inspire me a lot to the future in my case.
Great. Thank you very much. I just want to acknowledge that Gala, you've joined us, but we're just about to wrap up. So I'm just going to move on to close the. Okay, so last point. So just so that you know, basically, I'm going to send you all a follow-up email. In that email, I'm going to send you the links to access the Google Drive so that you can all go in there and take a look. I'm also going to send you the link that for the learning needs assessment, which is what Matthias had asked you to complete prior to this workshop. And it would be great if you could complete it before the next workshop number 2, because it helps me to design things that are supportive of what you need. Also, between now and the next workshop, if you have any questions or you need help with something, you can email me. And also I encourage you to connect with each other to get support or examples, or ask each other for, what did you do in this situation? And just a reminder that the next workshop is on Thursday, the 9th of August. It's the same time as it was today. And we will be focusing on dialogue, which is meaty and juicy. So join us. And thanks for staying with us. I know we're 5 minutes over, so I appreciate that. Sleep well or have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you, Liz. Bye.